Well, good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I just want to give you some things to just help you understand this journey I'm about to take you on. I'm excited about being here because I feel like I have this opportunity where many people will get to hear a very clear explanation of the educational journey of African Americans here in America. And I can't just dive into the civil rights movement or Jim Crow or segregation, desegregation, slavery and the like, or even current issues. I want to take you way back to Africa. Is anybody ready to go with me to Africa? Because I want you to understand our hearts, our emotions, the struggle, the journey. So here are a few things I'm going to give you to understand this journey. Number one, throughout my sharing, I'm going to be singing Negro spirituals. Negro spirituals are our first sign of literacy ability in the enslaved people, because it was their way of expressing their understanding of the Bible. The second thing I'm going to explain to you is, I'm hoping I don't have to use these. But there is so much I want to share with you in such a short amount of time. I may have to check them just to make sure I didn't miss something important. Is that okay with you? Good. So here we go. We're getting on the plane and we're headed to West Africa. Maybe Ghana, maybe Nigeria, who knows? Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. The best way for me to help you understand what it was like to be brought from Africa to America is to just give you an example of a story from a former enslaved person named Olaudah Equiano. Now, he may not have walked American soil during the times he was enslaved, but his story, which is one of the early narratives of what Africans went through, helped me really get a good understanding of what happened. He was royalty in his tribe. He was enjoying the freedom of his land. And to avoid a whole bunch of long detail, suddenly he was taken from his mom, taken from his dad, he and his siblings taken. For a minute, they had each other. And as they were taken, they would wrap each other in each other's arms, trying to comfort each other. But then they were ripped away from each other, sent to who knows where, never to see each other again. That is the story of every person who was taken from the continent of Africa and enslaved in America or Europe or the Caribbean. Can you imagine being in one place, knowing the language, knowing the culture, knowing the education? They did have education in Africa. Knowing that, and then thrust away from your parents, your culture, your language, your people, and everything that was familiar to you. And then you're placed on this boat, surrounded by people you don't know, have never seen, maybe even some of them from rival tribes. And then you're taken across the ocean, and some of the people around you who are on that boat that maybe you started to bond with died on the trip. You get to America, and you hear these strange people with skin a little bit lighter, just a little, than yours, speaking a language you've never heard, talking to you as if you're nothing, but yet you were actually royalty in your land. It was a hard journey. So they get here. We're enslaved. And we're not allowed to know how to read or write. Because, as Frederick Douglass's master said, if you give them too much, they'll just take it to another level. That's my interpretation of what he said. And so he said, let's keep them in the dark. Don't let them read. Don't let them write. In fact, if you were caught holding any type of writing utensil, your hand would be cut off. But yet, we persisted. We wanted to learn. And we didn't have our country. There was nothing given to us to connect us there. So as James Baldwin says, I had to make sense of this place, this foreign land where I now am. What is this book right here? What are these symbols that form something that I always see the master and his children and his wife and his family reading it? That must be the key to understanding these people, this place. And so began the journey. Now, some people think that because when we came here, we didn't speak English or we couldn't read and we couldn't write. Well, let's say, what would happen if somebody took you from your mom and dad, took you across the ocean to some foreign country and plopped you in there and said, now survive, and on top of that, get me something to drink? How would you even be able to know what to do? Wasn't that we didn't have the intelligence or the intellect or the power within ourselves to learn? We were just in this foreign place. And no one was allowed to teach us how to interpret anything. So we had to get it for ourselves. And we did. Even if we lost our life, we did. They say Frederick Douglass used to take pieces of sticks and in the dirt would try to form them into the letters he would happen to see in his master's office if he happened to be in there one day. We were enchained physically, but our minds were still running free. You could strip us of the ornate cornrows that used to help us identify who we were in our tribe. You could take our clothes. You couldn't take our mind. And so here we were in America, enslaved, forced into labor, horrible conditions, whipped, but still trying to learn. And one of the first things we did, because we saw the Bible often used by those who enslaved us, we began to internalize the Bible for ourselves. That same way we would learn in the land of Africa, where we were priests and priestesses and kings and tribal leaders, and that same power we had there, we put to work here to learn our journey here, to learn who these people were here, to learn how they think so we could know how to relate and survive here. Steal away, steal away, steal away to Jesus. We had to steal our education. We had to steal it. We were sneaking in the shadows, trying to find that way to learn. And then, hallelujah, slavery ended and we all were free to just learn as we wanted. No. Can you imagine? Slavery ended with one of the most horrible wars. It was not like everyone like, oh yes, let's please, we must free the slaves together. Let's make this one happy effort and make sure they get all the education. This was a fight. People died. People lost their lives, all to keep the enslaved people enslaved. But it ended, thank God. And schools were created and allowed by the very people who wanted to keep us enslaved. Ooh, that's kind of scary. Could the school system be a plantation by another name? So schools were created. At first, it started out like this. We had these schools. They don't look like some of the schools that were existing at that time, as you can see. But we had black teachers, and we were given books. Yes, lovely books that we used to not be allowed to read. But unfortunately, they were all outdated. And sometimes the pages were ripped out. And sometimes there was scribbling in it, so we couldn't really get the information we needed. And whole chapters would be missing. But we still persisted. And our black teachers took whatever resources they could get their hands on and gave us the best they could, sometimes using whatever scrappy books we had, sometimes not. So that didn't work. Wow, we got them off the physical plantation, we created schools, and we're gonna give them these poor resources and hopefully keep them in the dark. This is gonna work. Oh no, they're still learning. Dagnabbit, these people keep learning. What are we gonna do now? And we'll look like we're supporting their desire for desegregation. Let's work with them. They want equal education. Yes, let's give them desegregation. And then they made our lives a living hell in those schools. They fought us. You had whole teachers refusing to teach black children who now had to be in their schools. You had people refusing to send their children to those schools, but still we persisted, and we were trying to develop a literacy in this foreign land that for over 400 years had been kept from us. And we weren't running to this literacy because we somehow hated ourselves. Because, you know, when I tell people I love the great books, I get a lot of mixed responses. A lot of them aren't too great. And somehow when I say it, well, who said those books are great? I said, you know, I'm not going to really get into that with you right now. They are the books that form the foundation of this country. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired. W.E.B. Du Bois, he has a whole essay on this very topic. I'm tired of living underneath the veil. He calls it when we don't expose ourselves and our children and our students to the literature that the slave master was reading, to the people who oppressed us, to the people who live in this land. If we don't all read that same literature, we remain under the veil. We remain lost. And so they did. They ran for that literature. Most African American authors, philosophers, educators, activists, from the Black Panther to Obama, have great books on their reading list. Frederick Douglass said reading Cicero gave him the language he needed, because he was enslaved and illiterate, who taught himself to read. But reading Cicero gave him the literacy he needed to speak about abolition in a way that all men would accept. It connected him to everybody. I cannot change the past. I cannot fix what happened. I can only deal with right now. And so in my journey, in my own journey, my educational life was not, my mom says, I wish you had created the school back when you were in school, but that was not possible. So in my journey to find a school where my own children did not have to deal with some of the oppressive ways of traditional schooling in the schools that I grew up in, I began to really investigate more liberating educational philosophies. I found two. I know there's a lot. If anyone's listening, please, I know there's a lot of different ones, but the two I found, and the reason why I love them so much is because I call it the naked freedom given to every student. Like, without any blueprint of what you shouldn't know, no scope and sequence, just, I'm accepting you as an equal human being. That is the kind of education I wanted for my kids, for myself, for other people's children. So I came up with two, the Sudbury model and liberal arts education. But I want to talk about, even though one is, they're written in that order, I want to talk about liberal arts education more. My first experience was here at St. John's, sitting there discussing literature I actually had not had the chance to really delve into before arriving here, and reading all of this literature. And I remember one day sitting there and feeling so at home. For once in my educational journey, where I am the only African American in the space, I felt equal. I mean, I felt equal in myself, but you know what I mean? Like feeling equal with the people, like they saw me as equal. We're all equal human beings. Just sharing our opinions about this piece of literature, it just tore down a lot of walls. And then I found that as a result of reading this literature, I began to understand newspaper articles, TV shows, just the stuff that was around me. And it's like a whole world of understanding opened up to me, but that would make sense, right? Like if you go to Spain because you want to become literate in Spanish, you want to read their literature, you want to talk to the people, to gain that understanding. Well, that is the same process an African American needs to go through here. And so when I look at people like the co-founder of the Black Panther, Huey P. Newton, who taught himself to reading Plato's Republic, but yet he became a Black Panther. Now, if that doesn't prove to you that reading great books makes you somehow not love your people, I don't know what else to tell you. If Martin Luther King's whole letter from a Birmingham jail is based on some of the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas. Now, does everybody know who Martin Luther King is? Anyone here not sure of who he is? Okay. Does he give you any sign that he doesn't like the color of his skin? Anybody here think he was not interested in being an activist for his people? Yet the man was proficient in the great books. Frederick Douglass, right? He loved slavery. He read the literature to prove that slavery was a good thing. I'm being sarcastic. All of these people, I could go on. James Baldwin, I could go on and on. Toni Morrison, one of her majors was classics. But yet, we consider her one of the spokespeople for the journey of the African American people. This is all evidence that there is something to this literature that is a part of our history here in America, that is relevant to our development here and growth here in America, and it has nothing to do with saying one race is better than the other or one book is greater than the other. The men just called it the great books. That's really the only reason I use it, because I want to make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. And they help bring us together. It connects me with you. And then finally, the Sudbury model. I like it because where liberal arts works really well to free the mind, the Sudbury model, I feel, frees the whole being. I liked it more than the other free-thinking philosophies because, like I said, the naked freedom. It's like, there's a child. Take him as he is. His thoughts, his feelings, and work with that. I'm not coming with a blueprint or a lesson plan. Just see where this child takes you and run with that. One reason why I had to really look into two philosophies is because I initially wanted to bring just the Sudbury model. And I began to get a lot of pushback from the African American community. And I was frustrated about that. And my husband told me, I think I know why parents are struggling with this total free thing. He said, do you realize education was used as a weapon against us? We weren't allowed to learn how to read. We weren't allowed to learn how to write. That is a part of our history. Now you're trying to create a school where you say, oh, I'm not going to be teaching your child how to write and read. We're just going to freely let them learn. That right there to an African American is like, I can't even hear you talk right now. So to meet my people halfway, I turned to what I experienced at St. John's and the massive amount of learning that happened for me there. And I began to marry it into the school where we still have that beautiful, like I said, naked freedom. But for our reading and our class, the few classes we do offer, it's done all through Socratic dialogue, one-on-one interaction. And we always do a seminar once a week where we just discuss a piece of literature together in groups. And the kids write their essays based on their understanding of that. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. when I went to go see Harriet Tubman, anybody seen that, Harriet? I walked out of there on fire. I said, that's my calling. I am freeing the slaves from the plantation of traditional education. And I was excited. I wanted to take these young people who, because as an African American in this educational society, there's this constant pressure to be better than, to just go the extra mile just to be considered equal. So we study hard, we try to get the highest score in the SAT, we try to get the prestigious job, and no one ever asks us, well, who are you? What do you want to be? What are your gifts? What are your passions? That was never asked me when I was in school. And I want to take them here where we are collaborating, where their voice matters. We're in a country where our voice did not matter. In this classroom, in this school space, your voice matters. Who you are, who you were created to be, matters. And I love how when I was at St. John's, I experienced that. I felt like I mattered. My voice, my opinion mattered. I wasn't afraid if I didn't understand a text, because someone usually would ask a question about the same thing I was afraid to ask, and I would learn. And then when I got the boldness to say, I don't understand this, there was no scorn or condescension. There was an acceptance, because we all agreed, tutors and students alike, that we're all equal on the same journey of learning. That is the kind of the creative space I want to create for students in their learning journey, where everyone is equal. And I've named some who took classics and made it a part of their educational journey and a part of their activism. I have Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Phyllis Wheatley, even though people don't consider her an activist, the first Black female poet published. And she loved the Greek myths, even though she was bought at a slave auction. So I hope you enjoyed my journey. I didn't have as much time as I'd love to have to just talk to you about that whole thing. But I hope you understand what we have gone through, what we have had to do, and that when we don't have more liberated educational philosophies for for every child, actually, but especially for African American children, we keep them on the plantation. Thank you.